As a parent, I have bedtime routines. My kids love to be tucked in, like they need to be tucked in. Like every single night, this is like a thing that they need for like their health and their sanity. As they have gotten older, those rhythms have changed. They become like a lot less laborious than they used to be. Like originally, we got songs, we got prayers, we got like multiple tucking in events. Like you have to have this blanket in 6 different orders, right? If that order is not correct, then it's not okay, right? I would reenact where the wild things are. That was a big one. Like it was a whole thing. And it's fantastic. It's like one of my favorite parts of my day. And then you're tired as a parent, so there are days you're like, I have nothing to give in this moment, right? Where the wild things are, but I'm giving it, and we're going to sing, row, row, row your boat for the 8,000th time, but I'm doing it, and I'm here, and I'm with it. As my kids get older, they just want to be tucked in. And like tucked in, quite literally, they do it on their own now, right? They are like in their bed, do everything. They just literally want us to go and be like, and you're tucked in. But if that doesn't happen, shit is hitting the fan, okay? At all, there's a kid in the room, for the love of God. Yeah, that's okay. I need to like really embrace what's in my brain right now, and we're going to stop that. Yeah, my pastor taught me these words. When I'm unhealthy and I'm like exhausted and worn out tucking my kids in, it's like I got nothing. And it's summer, so like tucking in schedules are very challenging at the moment, right? Kids want to be up late. We're not getting ready for school. It's like 11:30 p.m. I'm still waking up at 5 a.m. I don't get like summer off, right? And they're like, there's a kid flailing on the ground. I need to be tucked in. I need to be tucked in. And it's just like, and part of me, when I'm at my unhealthiest, I want to lose it on them. And have lost it this summer. There's like the next version up where it's like, I'm not angry, but I am just ignoring you with all of the superpowers that a parent has to completely ignore you in this moment. And I will somehow go to sleep and your cries will be my lullaby because I am ready to go to bed right now and it's too late. So then we like set new boundaries. Okay, if you want to be tucked in, mom and dad will still need to go to bed. We're going to let you guys get like a little while this summer. You can stay up, you can read, you can play games, you can do whatever. But mom and dad, if you're not tucked in by 10:30, mom and dad are not coming in, right? So we're like setting boundaries. We're getting a little bit healthier with some of that stuff. Then there's like the healthier versions. Like the healthier versions is like someone's losing it because they passed that boundary and they're screaming that they need to be tucked in. And now I'm like doing gentle parenting because I've had a healthy day. I'm listening to myself. Tell me about why you're so frustrated. Help me understand what it was like to not be tucked in before 10:30 p.m., right? That's a good one. Yeah, there you go, parents. You understand what I'm saying right now. And then there's like the healthiest. The healthiest version of me is like someone's losing it and there's just like levity in the room, you know? There's like a kid like throwing a fit on the ground that they're not tucked in and it's just like, yeah. That's the absolute worst that you're not getting tucked in right now. Am I right? Right? And just playing with them, whatever. And then it's like, yeah, you know what? I can tuck you in. There's just a whole spectrum of being a parent, right? And tucking in time in the Marquez household. But here's what I know it represents. Safety for my children. They are safe enough to throw a tantrum when they are not tucked in. What an absolute gift. That they, in front of us, get to lose their mind and let it be known to the world, I am tired. Yeah. How many of us want to do that? Just sit on the floor and scream and flail our arms and let everyone know the injustices that the blanket was not put over me by a large giant. Yeah. Safety is everything. The first question that I looked at that I was like, yeah, this is the question that I want to speak to that you all turned in was, how do I navigate family who is hateful? And I know so many in this room, that's something you have to navigate. Maybe it's a broader question. Maybe it's just how do you navigate a world that's hateful? How do you navigate a world? Maybe that's ignorant. Not in like people are not evil, malicious, or bad, by the way. People oftentimes, whatever they believe it for a reason. They're trying to be faithful for a reason. And we learn and we grow that these people are not just trying to be hateful, maybe our experience of it, but how do we navigate these relationships in different ways? And the truth of that, I think the wisdom of Jesus is you can spend all of your time waiting for family or for others to not be hateful, and whatever your version or interpretation of that is. Or I think the Jesus way is you get to do the work yourself. and you get to interpret how tucked in time is going today. You can lose your mind, or you can have levity, or you can have space, or you could observe, or you too could be other in this moment and know that there's parts of you that screams at times, I'm just tired. I'm just protecting myself. I'm just scared. So to talk about that, we're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about armor. I have a huge hole in my pants, so forgive me. I'm realizing that as I turn around, and so I'm just naming it front row splash zone. You're welcome. That says amor. It's not amor, but it's armor. Armor. If we can talk about armor, then we're going to talk about some Jesus. Look at that was amazing, right? We're going to talk about some Jesus questions. If we can understand some Jesus questions, then we're going to talk about vulnerability and the trust cycle. And if we can talk about vulnerability and a trust cycle, then we're going to talk about the shame tapes that we have in our heads. And if we can talk about the shame tapes that we have in our heads, then the Christmas and Thanksgiving paradigm, my friends. And if we can really understand the Christmas and Thanksgiving paradigm, then Wednesday. Anybody watching it? Okay. If we talk about Wednesday, then we'll bookend this bad boy as we think about this question of how do we navigate family who's hateful. Really, a deeper question is, what's the relationship that I want to have with my relationships is maybe the more honest question of what we're trying to figure out. Every single one of us wears armor. We just do. We wear armor to protect ourselves as human beings. Sometimes we wear armor and like in the clothes that we wear. You wear like a fitting thing for that particular circumstance, right? There's a facade, a mask that we put on to protect ourselves in the world. You know what you're signing up for if you go to a sporting event and you're dressed in a tuxedo, inappropriate armor, right? There's certain things that you wear at certain times. Then there's the deeper layers of armor that we wear to protect ourselves, to keep ourselves safe, to make sure that we are okay. And as human beings, we just all wear it. But what we're hoping for, what we're longing for, is that there are spaces in our lives where we can just take off that armor, where you can just be fully you, tantruming, sad, mad, alive, joy, where you can just laugh out loud and no one's going to judge you, where you can just sit in your tears and it's okay. This work that we're doing as human beings is one, can we be okay with ourselves in that? Can we take off the armor even for us? Can we take off the armor so that we can look deep within our souls, within our minds, within our beings to say, I'm okay? So much of the work at New Abbey that we do here is we're trying to learn to take off the armor that we put on when we talk to God. That so many of us have an unhealthy relationship of who we think that God is, and we're playing games to keep the magic genie happy. Anybody been there? And then you get to the place of, no, what if God sees me for all that I am and that I'm okay and that I'm loved and that even in that, there's not an angry God who needs to like kill his son to be happy with me, but there's a God out there who's showing me a way of good news and of life that I can follow that will bring me rest for my soul, that will bring life to my being. So much of that work is what we do. And then what we're hoping for, what we long for as human beings is, can we take our armor off around other people? Will they make us feel safe? Could I be wildly vulnerable with them? To talk about armor, I want to check this out, the passage out in Mark chapter 3. Then Jesus' mother and brothers arrived, and standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. And a crowd was sitting around him, and they told him, your mother and brothers are outside looking for you. Who are my mother and my brothers? He asked. Then he looked at those seated in a circle around him and said, here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and my sister and my mother. Jesus is always challenging the status quo. One of the interesting things about Jesus is he challenges every institution of his day. Jesus challenges family institutions. Jesus challenges government institutions. Jesus challenges religious institutions. I grew up as a good evangelical. I have no idea what you grew up with. So we never talked about Jesus challenging government institutions, and we never talked about Jesus challenging family institutions. Only religious ones. Because in my particular narrative of evangelicalism, we needed Jesus to challenge Judaism so that we could see that he was the true Messiah and that he kind of took that thing over, and then now like the whole story works out. Anyone ever in that story? Yeah. But one of the reasons we would never challenge government institutions is because we're evangelical Americans. Government works for us. We're the most powerful people in the world, and religion and state go hand in hand. We never challenged family institutions. And by the way, this is not a critique in a bad way. It's just an observation. It's an observation. I have no more interest to be cynical. It's not helpful and it's not going to serve you. It's okay to make observations of the world sometimes, right? The world's just changed. It just has. I have no idea what type of therapy or psychology my grandparents probably had access to. It was called alcohol. That's what they had. That's how they fought Nazis. You know what I'm saying? This is a real story. They weren't going to a therapist. They weren't sitting around with their feelings, right, and saying to Ed or whatever his name was, how do you feel about vulnerability today as we're on the front lines? That's not a thing that they were doing. And the generation before that, when they're just farming or whatever's going on, there wasn't space. So we just have different questions that we're asking now, right? And we have a different world and a different context about how we understand Jesus and how we understand faith. And so we're asking all of these questions about the questions that Jesus is asking. And that Jesus is intentionally trying to challenge all of the structures of the world because Jesus is trying to create a new world order. Jesus is trying to create a different reality. Jesus is trying to create a different kingdom, a different perspective for how we navigate all of those things. We definitely would have never talked about Jesus challenging family institutions. I just grew up in the world, and I'm sure many of you, that was just your family, and no matter how horrible they were, you had to love them. Anybody else? That was it. I'm the only one. Yes? Anybody? Anyone? Yeah. Thank you. I don't want to be alone up here. All right? And I think that's changing. I think we have different information now, and we're asking different questions about parentification, about different generations, about a generation that raised children not so that they could love them, but they raised their children to love them. Different way of looking at things. We have a whole generation of gentle parenting now where we exert so much of our energy that we are very aware that we are creating a world to create love for our children, for them to thrive. We are not raising children in order to fulfill the needs of love of the family. It's just a different arrow that's going on there. Jesus, here's the beautiful thing. Regardless of what generation you grew up in or where you're at, Jesus has been challenging these things for thousands of years. And Jesus always challenges things by asking questions. Jesus was a marvelous question asker. I like to say this a lot because I think that we forget it as American Christians. Jesus was Jewish, right? And good Jews ask a lot of questions. That's just the way that it works in Judaism, particularly in Jesus' day. It's like the old saying goes, if you have two rabbis in a room, you have at least three opinions. That's the point. Jesus was asked 183 questions. And without fail, except 3 times, Jesus responded with questions or with stories. Even that should change the way that we have a relationship with God. I think for myself and for many of us in this room, the relationship that we had with God is that we wanted God just to give us answers. How many of us have prayed that prayer? God, would you just give me a sign? Would you just give me an answer? Would you just show up and would you do the thing? And what's so interesting about the way of Jesus is he almost never does that. Isn't that fascinating? Instead, Jesus invites you into more questions, into more probing, into more depth so that you too can eventually take off your armor, so that you too can eventually experience this kingdom of God where you're free to be fully yourself. There's this old 3rd century bishop named Irenaeus, and he says this, that glory to God as a human being fully alive. That's what we're looking for here. When you're fully alive, when you don't have to carry all of your armor all of the time to protect yourself, when you can feel seen by yourself, by God, by others, that's what we're doing. And Jesus takes you there by teaching you to ask more questions. By the way, fun fact, and this is for free, commercial break, the 3 times that Jesus does answer directly, it's about this. Should we pay taxes to Caesar? Jesus says, you better. That's fascinating, by the way. Have fun with that one. Also, I think the reason for that, this is all commercial break, has nothing to do with the sermon, so enjoy, is that Jesus is pragmatic and practical, and I don't think most of us have given Jesus that ability to be pragmatic and practical. Jesus, at the end of the day, just wants your life to work for you. So a lot of times what we want from God is we want God to do magic genie stuff and not to be practical. There was a time at New Abbey where we had all of these interns from college, and they would come and be like, money is just a construct and capitalism's not real. I'm like, yes, and you cannot pay your rent with hugs. So it's real. You have to pay taxes, and Jesus was always aware of that. Jesus would be like, yes, I'm going to tell you about another kingdom and another reality, and there are just some things of the reality that you live in that you're going to have to deal with, because it is what is. That's A hard awakening, but a good one for people, right? Next one is, they ask Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. He answers that directly. And then the final one is all about Jesus' identity. Are you the Messiah? I am he, Jesus says. That Jesus cares about the identity and the relationship that we have. Nothing to do with my sermon. Free commercial break. Enjoy. And now we're back. Jesus is teaching us a life of asking questions. Jesus is teaching us a life of probing deeper of where we're at and who we are and our way of understanding the world. And so as we ask these deeper questions of how might we take off our armor, how might we navigate the relationships to the relationships that we have in life? What would it look like for the people that are closest in our life that they could see us fully and that we would let them in? I want to talk about some tools that would go with that. The first tool I want to think about is vulnerability and trust cycle. Here's the crazy thing is that vulnerability and trust, they go together. You can't have one without the other. Vulnerability is awful. Bet you didn't see that coming. The reason that I find vulnerability awful is because it is requiring me to risk. Are we saying donuts? Yeah, we got to get you some donuts. Can someone get this man some donuts? In Jesus' name. Not every time you shout out a prayer in church will it be answered, but today, my friend, God sees you. God sees that hand. God sees that heart, and God will provide for you. I'm not joking. Can someone get this man some donut? There you go. Yeah. Serve the children already. I was about to run out there myself. Vulnerability, you have to take a risk. You're taking a risk to expose yourself to another human being, and you don't know the outcome. Kids do it all the time. They're tired, they're scared, and they just run at you. They don't know what you're going to do back. They just trust you're going to embrace them in this moment. How many of you in this room have been in that? Thank you. Yeah, hey, give a round of applause for that. This is the most ADHD Sunday service you've ever been a part of. And I'm here for it, to be honest. How many of us have longed to be in that place where you just want to risk so badly with another human being? You've sat across the table with them for years. You've had this conversation over and over in your mind. You were just there in that moment and you just wanted to be raw. And you wanted to be seen. And you didn't do it because you were terrified of the outcome. This vulnerability is finding the right people to be vulnerable with. I am awesome at over-disclosing. I am horrible at figuring out vulnerability. And it's an area that I have to grow in. And really what I've learned, particularly over the last couple of years, is who can I be vulnerable with? I grew up as like dancing man on stages in churches, like giving sermons. And I just thought my job was to always share my heart all of the time until it was used against me. And then I learned, my job is not to be vulnerable with everybody. I had to relearn trust in my life. Who can I actually trust and who is okay holding these things? And it was a risk. Those moments that you did take and you risked and you took out that armor and somebody could see you. I remember 5 years ago, my marriage was falling apart. I had just had a therapy session where my wife sat next to me, and it was one of those moments. It was COVID. We were going through it. We're doing internal family systems. It was the most difficult season of our marriage. And my wife held my hand in therapy and said, I'm not sure if I'm in love with you anymore. And I needed those words, crazy enough, after the fact. And I just remember that day not knowing what to do. I was just driving around trying to sort out what reality was. I knew it was going to be okay. I knew what she said was really important. I had no idea what the outcomes were in the future. And I knew in this moment she had some healing to do as well because of the things that I had done. And she wasn't going to be the person that I could be vulnerable with because she needed her own healing. And I needed to give her that space. I remember just driving by friends' houses, just hoping, please God, would they be there? And I remember getting to a house, and my buddy, he's 6'6" and 240 pounds. I saw him just working on his yard, and I just pull up and I park, and I just run into his arms, and he just held me as I sobbed. And I needed it. I needed it. In that moment, I just needed to risk because I couldn't do this alone. I had no room for any more armor. My armor wasn't serving me. My armor, in fact, was one of the reasons that my wife was telling me those words. because I've been protecting myself and blocking myself so long. I can no longer serve her. And then that just created a beautiful relationship of trust with that friend, where now I could trust him in a different way, and it allowed for more vulnerability, and the cycle continues in a good way. How may some of you use this tool? Who are the right people in your life to be vulnerable with? Who are the people that you need to take a risk with because you're tired of being alone? By the way, all of the research on loneliness is so astronomical at the moment. We're lonely than we've ever been as a society. That social media, that access to technology, that our ability to numb and to avoid makes us lonelier. And then the statistics around a place like Los Angeles, even more astronomical than other places. That we are a society of people that are longing to be connected, longing to be held, longing to be heard and to be known. And maybe there's even somebody here who you trust and you're ready to take that risk. The next tool is the shame tapes. Shame is this powerful thing. I want to define shame. I stole this from the great prophet Brené Brown. Yes, no, maybe so. Did we give you that one? No? You have it? Great. I'll have it on my phone then if they don't have it. Oh, there we go. Shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love, belonging, and connection. And we've all experienced that moment of shame. One of the hardest things about relating to family sometimes is that they're the people that we want and we think ought to be the ones that are there for us, to keep us safe, to tuck us in at night. And the challenge sometimes of family is that they have proven that they are not safe to do that. And then when we go, especially kids to parents, and you go try to relate to that parent because you're trying to be vulnerable, you're trying to take a risk, and then they put up their armor again, it creates more feelings of shame. And it's a different type of cycle. It's a shame cycle that you can't get out of, where you're trying to find love and you're trying to find connection, but it keeps making you feel like that you're flawed, or that you're unworthy of love or belonging, connection, that something is wrong with you. There are just two really tapes of shame, and shame goes like this: either never good enough, or who do you think that you are? How many of us have asked that question? That in that moment where you wanted to be vulnerable, where you wanted connection, where you wanted to be seen and known, it didn't work. And then you ask yourself, am I good enough? Who do you think you are, Cory? That you can do that. That you can ask those questions. That you should expect that they would show up for you in that way. You know that you're not good enough. You know that they don't like you. You know that they're really not going to be there for you. How many of you have tapes that replay again and again and again and lead you to shame? How you combat shame is you combat it with empathy. That's the GPS system that you navigate the shame cycle with. That what empathy teaches you is it teaches you to listen deeply. That when shame comes up, when you feel these feelings of being unworthy or not loved or not connected, you can run from it. You can put more armor up. You can avoid it. But when you numb out the bad stuff, you also numb out the good stuff. And you don't feel. And so when we feel shame, it's an opportunity as we get healthier to say, I am experiencing this right now. And maybe I'm experiencing it with the people that I want to love most in the world and they're not there for me. So now I got to go do the deep work of listening to myself. And then eventually, maybe as you get healthy, and potentially, not always, you might get to a place of asking those people and deeply listening to their journey and their wounds and where they're at. I also stole these shame thoughts from Brené Brown. Maybe some of these register with you. Shame is getting laid off when we're expecting our first child. Shame is hiding my addiction. Shame is raging at my kids. Shame was my response to seeing my parents' shame when I came out. Shame is covering up a mistake at work and getting caught. Shame is failing at my business after my friends invested in it. Shame is getting a promotion, then getting demoted 6 months later because I wasn't succeeding. Shame is my boss calling me a loser in front of our colleagues. Shame is not making partner. Shame is my wife asking me for a divorce and telling me that she wants children, but not with me. Shame is getting sexually harassed at work, but being too afraid to say anything because he's the guy that everyone loves. Shame is constantly being asked to speak on behalf of all Latinos in marketing meetings. I think this part's funny. But I'm from Kansas. I don't even speak Spanish. Shame is being proud of a completed project, then being told it wasn't at all what my boss wanted or expected. Shame is watching things change so fast and no longer knowing how and where I can contribute. The fear of being irrelevant is a huge shame trigger. Maybe that list speaks to you. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're going to fill in your own blank. But shame is this experience that we all experience all of the time, and we navigate it when we bring out our GPS system of empathy. And we say, shame is telling me something right now. And I either have the choice to put on my armor, or I can ask myself deeper questions about who I am and where I'm at. And then eventually, as I ask myself questions and trust, then eventually maybe I can move into a place of vulnerability with another and then develop this cycle of trust. If we can work on vulnerability and trust, if we can talk about shame, then I want to talk just quickly about boundaries. And I call this the Christmas and Thanksgiving paradigm. A mentor told me 5 years ago this, and it changed my life when I was navigating what it looked like to have healthy boundaries with my family. And it was simple as this. Cory, you don't even want to spend a normal Tuesday with those people. Why would you give them Thanksgiving and Christmas? Holy shit. And that's a big one. That so often what we need is we need to create boundaries, that we keep forcing insanity in the most important relationships of our life, and we're expecting that it's going to go different. I know what's going to go on here. I've done all of the work. I've been in therapy. I've talked with all of my friends in my smaller group at New Abbey. I'm at my best. I've got like 2 crystals under my pillow right now, right? I did just a dash of ayahuasca, and I am seeing the world clearly. And when I go to Thanksgiving this year, I just know that my parents are going to tell me this year how excited they are for me to be gay. Anybody ever been there? They're going to change their mind. All of the patterns, the 40 years of patterns that they have are going to be different now because I've done my work. Anybody stepped into that situation before? And then you go in and it's insanity. Of course it's insanity. You know that there are landmines everywhere, but you're like, but this time I'm not going to step on any of them. You're right. You may not step on any of them. But you might be in a place where these people have a proclivity to step on landmines. And it's just about creating healthy boundaries in our life. That if you are experiencing the insanity cycle, if you are on a carousel in certain meaningful relationships where you find yourself experiencing shame every time you are around those people, maybe stop spending Thanksgiving and Christmas with them. That's a hard one, by the way. And I'm not even saying that's the right one for you. This will never be a place where we prescribe something to you like that. I do not spend Thanksgiving or Christmas with my family. And I'm okay with that decision, and it is the right decision for my life. The wounds, the trauma, the borderline, the abuse is real. It might not be real for you. And you have to decide that. This will never be a sermon where I'm going to answer the questions for you. You have to go ask yourself the deep questions. But listen well to yourself. If you experience shame again and again and again, and with the people that you feel like you should love the most or who should love you the most, you are feeling unworthy and disconnected, and something is wrong with you, it's telling you something. It is telling you to go do the work. It is telling you to find safe people to take your armor off with. It is telling you to ask deeper probing questions for your own soul. It is telling you to go find a healthy place of vulnerability and trust in your life. Whoever those relationships are, maybe that's family, maybe that's parents, maybe that's a sibling, maybe it's those best friends, maybe it's the people that you moved away from wherever home is, and when you go back to those conversations, you're not yourself anymore. Maybe the greatest gift is it's not your job anymore. Those people can't meet those needs. You don't have to go back to that old church. You don't have to respond to them on social media. You can have boundaries, and you don't have to give them the best of your time or your energy. Only you can choose that. Only you can choose the right questions to ask. That's your work. I'm loving Wednesday, by the way. Transition, hard transition. Season 2, anyone watching season 2? Or am I going to spoil all of this for you? Okay, yeah, I'm not going to spoil all of it. But season 2 is all about family dynamics. It's all about navigating the world of family trauma and family dynamics and patterns and habits. And what I love about our world right now, and I think this a lot, and I've said it before, is great television and great comedians. They are the prophets and preachers of our world. They are the ones willing to ask deeper questions that sometimes we don't even ask in these spaces. And I find myself like being healed as I watch like other people's family dynamics on television, even if it's like a horror. I don't even know what the genre of what that thing is called. But for me, it's just this reality of that we find other places to tell us stories so that we can heal deep inside. And that's some of the work that we need to do and find with one another. And so I don't know what tool that you need. Maybe the tool that you need is asking yourself, how am I going to take off the armor? What are some deeper questions that I can be asking myself? What are some deeper questions I can ask about my relationship with God and how I show up with God? Who are the people in my life that I can take a risk with so I can get into a vulnerability and trust cycle? Are there shame tapes playing in my life that I notice those and that I want to not avoid those, because if I keep numbing out, I'm not going to just miss out on the bad. I'm also going to miss out on all the good that's in my life. Do I need to set some new boundaries for where I am? What are the tools that are outside of the box that might bring me healing? There are all kinds of tools out there for you, New Abbey. You can choose. Trust that Jesus will be with you along the way and on the journey and caring for you and with you and ahead of you each step. Find the same 3 or 4 people around you and answer this question. What tools can you use to navigate your relationships?